Then, verse 12, I turned to see, that's another word to circle, whose voice it was that spoke to me. When I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was one like the Son of Man, dressed in a robe with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. The hair on his head was white as wool, white as snow, and his eyes like a fiery flame. His feet were like fine bronze as it is fired in a furnace, and his voice like the sound of cascading waters. Let me say that again real quick. Dressed in a robe with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. The hair of his head was white as wool, white as snow, and his eyes like a fiery flame. His feet were like fine bronze as it is fired in a furnace, and his voice like the sound of cascading waters. I love that cascading waters because he's surrounded by water on an island, so he's probably picturing it's loud, and this is a huge sound here, so he's probably just trying to write anything that is in his mind. He said, he had 7 stars in his right hand, a sharp double-edged sword came from his mouth, and his face was shining like the sun at full strength. When I saw him, I fell, that's another one, at his feet like a dead man. He laid his right hand on me and said, don't be afraid. I am the first and the last and the living one. I was dead, but look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Therefore, write what you have seen, what is, and what will take place after this. The mystery of the 7 stars you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Okay, so let's dive into, we saw a lot right here. Let's go to verse 12. Then I turned to see whose voice it was that spoke to me. When I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was one like the Son of Man. This is an important phrase. This is found in Daniel. So when you read Revelation, Daniel 7 on is great to read to try to understand this. You'll see things from Ezekiel and in Matthew. And here we see this phrase, Son of Man. This is what Daniel saw when he looks up. He says, I saw someone like the Son of Man on the clouds. There it is again. He has this vision. He's saying, I saw Jesus, the Son of Man. In fact, this is a title that Jesus uses for himself nearly 80 times. He calls himself Son of Man because this is all the way back from what Daniel saw. It's a title that Jesus even says for himself. He says, among them was one like the Son of Man. And now we're going to get into this picture of who Jesus is and what he looks like. Now, did you notice what John did after he saw everything? What happened? He fell. Thank you for the one person I was listening. All right, no, I'm just kidding. When John sees everything, he fell. This isn't the same Jesus he saw on the cross, was it? Before Jesus ascended and went to heaven, we see him as meek, humble. He is beaten and bruised. And Jesus ascends, and when we see him again, we see his power. We see his reign, his might. Whew. It's the same Jesus, but different. John probably remembers going fishing with Jesus and sharing laughs on a boat with him. And now when he turns, he sees someone that's beautiful. When he sees his face shining as bright as the sun, this reminds me of the transfiguration that we see when Jesus goes up on a hill. He brings Peter, James, John with him up the hill, and they see this light shining out of Jesus. Because Jesus is God, they're getting a glimpse of who is inside. They're all one, they have distinct roles, but Jesus is God, and we get to see his radiance go through him. And he's seeing it again. And we see what he's looking at. It says what? He dressed in a robe and with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. Do you remember when we did our series in Genesis on Joseph? And his dad gave Joseph a what that set him apart? A robe. What was unique about that robe? Do you remember? It's a long time ago. I'd be impressed if you guys remember this sermon today. But the robe was long-sleeved. It was long and long-sleeved. Why? Because it set him apart. If I wore a long-sleeved robe, I wasn't going to work like everyone else. I had a higher status. So when they went to work in the fields, they either had a vest or some short sleeve because it didn't get in the way of them working. But when Joseph's dad gave him a coat, it was a long sleeve because it's saying you don't have to work. You're set apart. You have a higher status. So right here, automatically, what's one of the first things he says? He's in a robe. This is a higher status guy. Not only that, with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. We'll see this also in the priests. The priests had to have some gold wrapped in their sash. Some. But Jesus is the ultimate priest. His is gold all over. So, before we dive deeper into this, I turned and saw 7 golden lampstands. These we saw at the end. You don't have to have a flip chart for this. These are the churches. These are the churches that there are. Now, did you notice about this is the lampstands aren't what shine. It takes oil. It's the light that shines. And the priests, when they would go into the temples, they had to keep the lights going. And who do we see in the middle of the lampstands? Jesus, always with his church. Never left the church. He's with his church. He's in the middle of it, and he's keeping the light going. That means you and I have to display that light as the light stands. We're the lampstands. We're not the light. Jesus is, and he needs to have that keep going through you and I. We're the stands, and the stands, what do? They elevate the light so it can be seen in the room. Are you and I living a life that is elevating the light of Jesus? That when people look at you, they see something different. People, that is okay. That people say, there's something different about you. Don't think, oh, okay, let me try to fit in more. Jesus didn't call us to fit in, but to stand out, to not be a part of the world, but be renewed of our mind, renewed of how we're living, to where people see you, they see something different. So here's the 7 golden lampstands. Among them was the one like the Son of Man. Jesus is among them, dressed in a robe, and with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. The hair of his head was white as wool, white as snow, and his eyes like a fiery flame. His feet were like fine bronze as it's fired in a furnace, and his voice like the sound of cascading waters. So here's this moment, church, where we're going to dive into these, and we're going to show you in moments of the Bible what these correlate with, okay? So do we have the slide that kind of unpacks some of these? His robe is his righteousness and his priesthood. We went over that. It sets him apart. The golden sash, again, gold usually symbolizes or refers to a divinity, but we saw the priests, like I said, they would just have some gold wrapped in the sash. This one, it's all gold. His hair, we see white. When you see white as snow, it means holiness. It's pure. But it also could mean wisdom. That's why my beard is gray. I'm just kidding. I had to do that. His eyes are like what? Fire. Now this I love right here. My mentor Gordon Rumble told me this when we would dive into this book together nearly 9 years ago. His eyes are like fire. And if you know anything about fire, that could mean one of 2 things. It could be comforting or frightening. When you're lost, say I'm lost in the woods, or I'm lost in the dark, and if I saw a fire out in the distance, it comforts me because I could go to it. I'm lost. I could see. There's a light. I'm going to it. If I'm on a beach and it's freezing out, what do? You make a little fire and you can get around it. You sing Kumbaya and you do these cool things. It could be comforting. It could bring you warmth. But if my wife and I were laying in bed and we heard our smoke alarms go off, and I open the door and there's a fire, that's frightening. If you're in the fire, it's pretty frightening. And so what do you see? Well, every person ever created, yes, even those in the womb, because that's life, are going to see the eyes of God. And it's going to be one of 2 things for you. It's either going to be frightening or comforting. Is he the Lord of your life? I do have to make this, and I don't want anyone to snip this and send it and say I said something I didn't, but here's one thing that the last pope had right. When he said all religions go to God, sure. He's either going to be your judge or your savior. I'm sorry, does the Bible not say every knee will bow? There's only one way to heaven, and that's Jesus. But yeah, everyone's going to stand before God. They're going to fall to their faces and fall on their knees and say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. And they're going to look into his eyes, and it's either one of two things. You're going to be comforted because you're standing before your Savior, your King, and your Lord. Or you're going to be frightened because you're standing before your judge. And he will send you to a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth where your prayers won't be answered. There's no God in hell. It's total apart from him. It says where the worm never dies. This means that there's a replay in your mind. It never dies. And you know it's never going to die in your mind if you reject Jesus Christ. You know it's going to go on in your mind for all eternity? I was this close of knowing. I should have said yes. I should have said yes. I should have said yes. When you look into the eyes of God, what are you going to see? I'm not going to be there with you to vouch for you. I can't say, yeah, they came to our Bible studies, God. You have to give an account of what you did with Jesus Christ. One of the greatest questions ever asked was by a man named Pilate, and he said this, what shall I do with Jesus? You're given that same question today. What eyes are you going to see? His feet, you see bronze. This is one of the stablest, sturdiest materials that they have that we build off of. Not only that, it's something that's been refined in a refiner's fire. So here's his feet.